Parsha Nitzavim. Parsha Nitzavim. And you are standing. You are standing. Let's talk to our Elohim, and we're going to take a look at where we are standing, if we're standing at all. Thank you, Father, for this time together. We ask that you will help us to understand. Open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word says. We thank you in the name of Yahushua. Amen. All right, so we've entered the time of feasts and festivals, and everybody's all excited, yay. But there's one particular festival that we're commanded to have joy, and that commandment comes to the festival of Sukkot, which is still, it's at the end of this month, but Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur are reflective festivals. Very important that we understand that. That we call Yom Teruah Rosh Hashanah is, to me, is a travesty. It is not, first of all, it's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not the first of the month, unless you go to the civil calendar, and then it becomes the first of the month. But you have a whole lot of stuff in Talmud that tells you to do all this stuff, and then we miss the point of what this time is all about. The actual name of it is Yom Teruah, and it's found one time in Leviticus, and then it's in an obscure passage in Deuteronomy that tells us, and we read it in English, and they translate it into English out of Hebrew, and it says, this will be a special event that you blow the shofar and all this other stuff. But within the Hebrew of the verse, it says nothing about blowing a shofar. It doesn't say anything about blowing a trumpet, for that matter. We call this Feast of Trumpets, but there's nothing about trumpets involved in it. What it says is dedicate yourself, hold a special assembly to dedicate yourself to a time of concentrated reading, concentrated study, concentrated self-reflection. Okay? Where are we going? We're heading towards Sukkot, which is a representation for us of the world to come. Okay? Which culminates, it ends in an eighth day, Shemini Atzeret. The eighth day is the recreation of what should have been all along. And we get an inkling of this because if we read Bereshit right, if we read Genesis right in the second chapter, it tells us, and Elohim rested from all the work that he had done. And he set apart the seventh day, and he rested on the seventh day. Then it says, and then he planted a garden in Eden, or east of Eden. And then he placed the man in the garden, because he did this on the eighth day. The eighth day is a representation of the world to come. When humankind has been restored, the relationship between humankind, or the Adam, and Elohim has been restored. Okay? So, with all that in mind, Nitzavim becomes a very important topic to consider moving towards Yom Teruah. This Torah portion is always read the Shabbat prior to Yom Teruah. So, without further ado, we're going to look at Devarim, or Deuteronomy 29, 9 through 14, and then we're going to read the whole of 30 here in a little bit when we get to it. So as we approach Yom Teruah, and shortly thereafter Yom Kippur, we must become more aware of the fact that we stand every day before Yahuwah, who alone is Elohim. Okay? So the first thing to think about as we move towards Yom Teruah is, how many Elohim do I have in my life? How many forces do I have in my life that actually either contribute to it or take away from it? What do I have to clean up? Because what is Yom Teruah about? Figuring out what it is I have to clean up, and then on Yom Kippur, cleaning it up. All right? So the first two verses are going to illustrate a very clear picture that everyone stands before Yahuwah Elohim. Everyone stands before Yahuwah Elohim. It doesn't make a difference whether you're a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or an atheist. It doesn't make any difference. Everyone stands in the presence of Yahuwah Elohim, because at every moment, at every time, there is a force that keeps us alive. Okay? Am I willing to have a relationship with that based on the instructions that that particular entity gave us? Or am I going to simply make up my own rules as I go along? Something else that we consider on Yom Teruah. All right? So let's look at the first few verses of the Torah portion of Nitzavim, which means you are standing. And it says, "You are standing this day, all of you, before Yahuwah your Elohim, your heads, your tribes, your elders, and your officers, even all the men of Israel." All right. So this is directed towards the children of Israel specifically, but it's saying all the men of Israel. So are women excluded from this? If we look at this topically, we say, well, all the leadership are there. But we can't look at things topically, okay? Because in the next verse, we'll clear some of that up. Before I get too far, let's just read it and we'll jump into it. This verse is the verse that sets the standard. We read it as if it speaks directly to those who are seeking Yahuwah and desirous to have, build, and maintain a relationship with their Elohim. That should explain the men of Israel, which is Kol Ish Yisrael is the last part of that Hebrew. Kol Ish Yisrael, all the men of Israel. What is Ish? Ish means man, but we also have to consider that when we see a male aspect in the Bible, it also refers to the physical aspect of worship. So the first thing that has to be examined is my physical aspect of worship. How is prayer is an overrated word, but we'll use it. How is my prayer life? Do I sit down and have conversations with my Elohim? How is my study life? Do I actually take the time to open the book and study it? Not to study about, we've been talking a lot about the two houses lately and this and that, and that's history. But do I take the time to study to learn how to apply this to my life? That becomes much more important than learning about the historical aspects of it. The historical aspects we pick up along the way. Okay? So when I say Ish, Kol Ish Yisrael, Kol, to become whole through Ish, to become Israel, to enter into the authority of Elohim. Okay? So this is why this becomes a very important verse. It sets the standard for who we should be. Okay? This goal is the main purpose of Yom Teruah. It is where our decision is made as to where we are in the relationship, and then prepare a prayerfully sought out plan to proceed forward in a truly meaningful way, ever conscious of the thorns and the thistles around us that would cause us to become distracted and stray away from our walk on the path. All right, so what is Yom Teruah for? First of all, it's to find out where we are in our relationship with our Elohim, where we are in our relationship with the Torah, with the instruction of Elohim, and where we are as far as being on the path. Am I walking through an entanglement of briars, or am I able to see the briars and walk around them? Okay? What jams me up? Okay? What is the decision we have to make? So Elohim tells Moses, if you will listen to my voice and you will guard my covenant, okay? If you will listen to my voice and you'll treasure the relationship you have with me, you'll be my special treasure. I'll make you a nation of ministers and teachers, and I will set you apart to the sole purpose of restoring the world back to me, okay? So here's the choice. The children of Israel say, everything that Yahuwah Elohim says, that we will do. Until the 10 Commandments are actually given, and then there's thunder and lightning, Very, very frightening me. Galileo Figaro. Okay. There you go. We get it. So, the voice is in the shofar. The shofar is sounding out of nowhere. No one's blowing a shofar, but the voice is in the shofar. This is when we say the blessing over the blowing of the shofar. We say, Leshemoa kol shofar, to perceive his voice in the shofar. But there's also thunder and lightning going on. They're so distracted, they don't listen to anything. And they go to Moses and they say, we cannot listen to this. You listen for us and tell us what it says. Okay? There's the second choice. Am I going to listen to the word of Elohim, and whatever the word of Elohim says, that I will do? Or am I going to continue to be dependent on what somebody else tells me it says and follow that goal? In other words, am I going to follow the instructions without adulteration, or am I going to follow doctrine and dogma? And that's where the choice is at Yom Teruah. Where are you? Okay, and we'll come back to that one. All right, so number 10, your little ones, your wives, and your stranger that is in the midst of your camp. And if anybody has read Joshua, they should kind of get an idea what this is all about. From the hewer of your wood to the drawer of your water. Okay? That hasn't happened yet. It will happen. Okay? So, the Pashat translation of the phrase, your little ones and your wives, would tell us that aside from the leadership in the previous verse, standing before Yahuwah, those who reside in their tents as family members are also standing in the presence of Elohim. All right, so there we go. We clear that man and woman thing up, okay? But Elohim is no respecter of persons. The Bible is not a chauvinistic book. There is no distinction between Ish and Isha. They are both Adam. When you read the Proverbs 31 woman, everybody wants to be, all the ladies want to be Proverbs 31 women. Men, do you have any desire to be a Proverbs 31 woman? Because you should. It's talking about this is how you grow spiritually. It's a spiritual aspect that applies to everyone. Okay, that's just an example. All right. So we see the Pashat translation that is talking about family members too. But we have to go deeper than simply the Pashat version. Sometimes we go to the Remesh, Deresh, or even Sod, the deeper aspects of it. So in this phrase, we may consider this idea. Your little ones, the smallest things in your lives must be considered, and the consideration must revolve around the concept of how these small things affect your wives, okay? Your spiritual walk and position within your covenant relationship with Yahuwah Elohim. Now let's look at the Hebrew word for your wives, which is neshechem, okay, neshechem. The root of that is Isha. But neshechem, if we break that up, remember, all Hebrew letters have a meaning, okay? So you can look at a single word and read a sentence. Okay, in this case, if we look at this, we have Nun, Shin, Yod, Kaf, and Mem. We would read, our lives, the Nun, are led by and established by our choices and our point of view of the Shin. Remember, Shin has two sides, our point of view or Elohim's point of view, being either Elohim's point of view or our point of view. These two items become the focus of our dedicated study on Yom Teruah, and in turn become our tool of cleansing and release on Yom Kippur. What am I doing on Yom Teruah? I'm blowing a shofar and I'm eating apples dipped in honey and I'm having a good time, but I'm ignoring the fact that I need to really do a thorough self-examination, because 7 days later or a week later is going to be Yom Kippur, and I better understand what I need to let go of. So this will in turn bring forth the Yod, the power and the ability of Yahuwah's Kaf, blessing, and the closed Mem, anointing, in our lives as we seek to strengthen our spiritual connection to Yahuwah, our Elohim. So how many things do we consider commanded by Yahuwah as part of our religious experience that in reality alienate us from the full and blessed covenant relationship with Yahuwah Elohim? It's a loaded question. How many things do we consider commandments that actually separate us from a relationship with Elohim? Okay? We live in a world of dogma. We live in a world of doctrine. We live in a world where people will take and push out something like Yom Teruah and replace it with something like Rosh Hashanah. Because Yom Teruah is for serious folks. Most folks in religious things are into the funner aspects of religious things. So we have Hanukkah to compete with Christmas. We have Rosh Hashanah to compete with New Year's. So let's do something fun to keep people engaged without teaching people that it's not my responsibility to keep you engaged. Your responsibility to keep yourself engaged. Okay? And that again comes back to, you don't need to listen to me tell you what it says. You need to be able to listen to it for yourself and say, everything that Yahuwah my Elohim says, that I will do. Okay? All right. So this question can easily be derived from the phrase, and your stranger that is in the midst of your camp. Okay, so what was the question? How many things do we consider commanded by Yahuwah as part of our religious experience that in reality alienate us from a full and blessed covenant relationship with Yahuwah Elohim? That question is easily derived from the phrase, and your stranger that is in the midst of your camp. If the tree of life is where? In the midst of the garden, right? What is the camp? The camp is your life. What is the garden? At this point, the garden is your life. What is in the midst of your life? The tree. Okay? All right. So if the tree of life is in the midst of the garden, your camp, that is our lives, why do we allow things that are not familiar to Yahuwah according to his word to distract our vision so that we see what can make us wise in our own eyes? What tree did Isha say was in the midst of the garden when questioned by the serpent? She said the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was in the midst of the garden. Okay? What tree are we eating from? That's another question that we ask on Yom Teruah. What strangers do we allow amongst our assembly? We are an assembly. We are a congregation within ourselves. What strangers do I allow within that? Okay? So to be able to look deeper at the phrase, from the hewer of your wood to the drawer of your water, we must take into consideration the event that took place between Joshua and the Gibeonites. And I wrote it this way because I thought Francois was going to be there, but they were in Florida, so I could have put the story, and I would have been fine. But, all right, so the Gibeonites, they were descendants of Canaan, and as such, cursed and set aside for destruction as the children of Israel took possession of the promised land. What did Elohim tell the children of Israel to do to the inhabitants of Canaan? Utterly destroy them. Okay? But it didn't happen that way. Knowing Israel's intention, the Gibeonites hatched a plan of deceit and tricked Joshua into sparing them. They in turn became the hewer of the wood and the drawer of the water. Okay? What does that particular story teach us? What the Gibeonites had done is they were the next town up. So what they do is they get some ragged out clothes, they get some really old wineskins, They get some moldy bread. They bathe themselves in dust. And they go to Joshua saying, we've been traveling for a long, long time to get to you because we've heard that you're all that in a bag of potato chips. This is the Extreme Reader's Digest version. And Joshua says what he shouldn't say. He said, oh, well, come on in. Let's be friends. We'll make a covenant together. We'll take care of each other. Doesn't know him from the man on the moon. Do we take the time to examine why we believe what we believe? Or do we simply take it as truth? Because after all, it's been around for 2,000 years, right? This particular teaching has been around for 2,000 years. I failed one of my cemetery classes because I chose not to give them the answer that they'd given me to give them. Okay? So, why do you believe what you believe? Okay?
Can I ask you a question about that one?
Yes.
That one, thank goodness you made that point about that one, because otherwise it makes, if we don't help someone in need, then we aren't being kind to our neighbor, are we?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that's not what that's teaching us. That's teaching us to look closer at what we're hearing and seeing in our
Right.
lives, right? Now, it hasn't got anything to do with how kind we are or helpful to other people.
And that's exactly it. I mean, if I'm walking down the streets of Lancaster, or I go to a QT to get gas in Lancaster, and there's people laying on the floor asking for money and this and that and whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, and they say, I'm hungry, can you give me some money to eat? Well, I know, based on where I'm at, that food is not what they're after. So I say, well, I don't have any cash on me, but let me see what I can do for you. Now go into the store and I will buy food and I will buy them something to drink and I will give it to them, and either they will be very grateful or they will use some very harsh adjectives to explain to me exactly how they feel about what I've just done, because I didn't give them. But I'm not there to judge them. You tell me you're hungry, I'm going to give you something to eat. Right. How you feel about it is on you, not on me. Right. Okay? Right. All right. All right, so the question here to consider as we move towards Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur is, what have I allowed to exist in my life because I didn't take the time to understand why I believe what I believe? How much time does it take to understand that? Sometimes a few minutes, sometimes quite a bit of time. Yeah. Sometimes a lifetime. We've been taught so much stuff. How do I know what's real and how do I know what's not real? You go to Facebook and it will tell you the exact truth about everything you want to know. Right? And my grandmother's the Pope. You've heard of her, Juanita Paulette the First. All right. Juanita Paulette the First?
Juanita Paulette?
That's it. So have I allowed something into my life that I have become attached to become a covenant I have made with it that in truth strains and stresses the covenant relationship that I have with Yahuwah my Elohim? Have I allowed something into my life that I have become attached to because of a covenant I've made with it that strains my covenant relationship with Yahuwah my Elohim? Okay? How many covenants am I part of in my life? Something to think about before moving forward to Yom Teruah, and especially before moving forward to Yom Kippur. Okay? Have I allowed something into my life? We just read that part. Okay. All of this must be taken into account before we can move towards verse 11 with confidence. So before we move towards verse 11, I have to have all the junk in my trunk cleaned out. I have to have my mind in order, my relationship in order. What my beliefs are have to be lined out and straightened out. because I'm moving forward into a relationship with my Elohim. That in verse 11 begins, that you should enter into a covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, and into his oath, which Yahuwah your Elohim makes with you this day. Okay? It is his covenant. It is his promise. And he is making this arrangement with us. Okay? Now, is it only on this day back here in time when Moses talked about it, which would turn it into a dispensation? This only applied to the children of Israel, right? Because it's a dispensation? No? No.
What's a dispensation?
Dispensationalism is that certain things only happened for X amount of time, okay? And then they were no good. You go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist gives you medicine. The medicine you take it gives you erythromycin. You take that erythromycin for 7 days, and then the dispensation is done. You go on to something else. Okay? There are no dispensations in Torah. Well, almost are no dispensations in Torah. But we're not going to get into that one right now. There's a dispensation in that the Levitical priesthood was not supposed to last forever. The priesthood of Melchizedek takes on.
We just went over that whole thing, saying those exact words
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday. Yeah, because we're in Joshua.
Yeah.
And we talked about them.
So that would be the only dispensation really that I can think of. But so is this only valuable for that day? Let's take a look. Note that the word to describe Elohim in this verse is Elohecha. Elohecha, which illustrates to us that what we have considered thus far deals with our own personal and intimate relationship with Yahuwah. When he introduces himself in the first commandment, he says, I am Yahuwah your Elohim. In Hebrew, he says, Anochi Yahuwah Elohecha. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Okay? He's not talking to Noah, not talking to Sister E. He's talking to you. But he's talking to the group. I can talk to the group and be speaking specifically to you, and to you, to you. Okay? And I got out of the camera. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm back. All right. All right. Elohecha. It's a very intimate word. Okay? So, what is being discussed here is very intimate to the person who is reading it and seeking to understand it. Okay? So, it's our own personal and intimate relationship with Yahuwah. Everything about Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur is personal and intimate, a personal and intimate search for the answer to the first question asked by Yahuwah to the Adam. Where are you? And when I say the first question asked to the Adam, is because up until chapter 4, when you read it in Hebrew, it says Ha-Adam. It doesn't say Adam. Because when it says Ha-Adam and it's talking about Adam in the first 3 chapters, it's talking about Ish and Isha both. It's talking about the man and the woman both. It's a word for humankind in Hebrew. We are Adam. He doesn't become the guy Adam until somewhere around the 4th verse. Okay? So, Yom Kippur, or Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur is a personal, intimate search for the answer to where are you? Every day is a new day. And it is daily that we must seek to be able to answer this question. Yahuwah is always faithful in his promise and in his dedication to the covenant relationship with those who wish to truly seek him in spirit and in truth. He's faithful to those who wish to truly seek him in spirit and in truth. Okay? Has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with what denomination you are or whatever it is that you are. Okay? This is noted in the phrase, the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, and into his oath, which Yahuwah your Elohim makes with you this day. Yahuwah has made his covenant and his oath with those who would seek a relationship with him, as seen in the pashat of these two previous verses. Okay? The word to consider here, though, is the word hayom, which is used to say this day. Now, the word for day is yom. Hebrew words are funny. They can have a dozen different meanings. Yom is one of those words. Yes, it means day. And when we look at it, primarily we think of yom as a day. But it can also mean a period of time. It can also mean something that is perpetual, a non-specific period of time, or a perpetual period of time, as in always. So if we consider the prefix hey, that in this case is used to say this, we can consider that this letter also means to behold or to pay attention. So in the word hayom, we can consider that we are always being looked upon by Yahuwah Elohim, and that in return, we too must be able to and be willing to behold his presence in our lives. Always. So it's not about this day, a few thousand years back. This is a perpetual thing. Elohim is looking for people who are to be in covenant with him, who are desirous to be in this covenant relationship. And he is always looking. So we in turn must seek to always be aware. Not to say, like we've said in the past, I believe something called God. I'm not quite sure, what that is. Am I aware of the presence of Yahuwah Elohim in my life? That's a totally different thing. Am I just as aware of Yahuwah Elohim as I am that Sean is sitting right there? Okay? That's the type of awareness that we strive to have. Because then he becomes, starts with an R, ends with an L. Real. Right? Right. All right. So in doing this, after having taken the time of self-discovery, we come to verse 12. It hasn't dripped all day, and then all of a sudden the camera starts rolling and starts, bumping my gums, and all of a sudden it just wants to open the gates. All right. So, verse 12. That he may establish you this day to himself for a people, and that he may be to you Elohim, as he spoke to you, and as he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So we become established in the sight of and the perception of Yahuwah our Elohim, and we are entitled to enter into the promises and blessings sworn to us in his Torah and throughout the balance of Scripture. Okay? We enter into a relationship with our Elohim. We become entitled to the promises and the blessings as long as we stay on the path. Okay? I can veer off course very easily. So if we consider the last part of this verse, and to Jacob, we have considered the idea that in our period of self-examination and study during Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur, we must be willing to supplant. Okay? Jacob means to supplant. We must be willing to supplant what is not true in our system of belief with what is true according to Yahuwah our Elohim, as found in his word. Okay? We have to be willing to supplant our doctrinal ideas with whatever truth is found in his word. If it goes contrary to our doctrinal belief, which one takes precedence? The word of Elohim or our doctrine?
Yes.
Well, it has to be our doctrine because we have friends and all this other stuff that... oh, wait.
Lost those.
We have to do it according to the word of Elohim. We have to leave doctrine behind. Okay?
Yeah, I'm so glad you made that point. into Yaakov. Yaakov, he's a supplanter. What are we talking about? But you're turning it around the other way. That we can supplant in a good way. We're turning it around.
Exactly.
From our own perspective, aren't we?
Yes.
So being Yaakov that way, yeah, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
If it's Yaakov that way, because
Thank you.
then Yaakov becomes Israel.
Yeah.
Because if I can supplant the word of Elohim with, put that in place of the doctrine, then I move closer to Israel. I move closer to the authority of Elohim in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good point.
Yes,
Good point.
Good point.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Relief. All kinds of good stuff in the air. Has nothing to do with anything, but I'll share it. I had a guy that came to first aid last week, and he got this little rash. He said, I was under one of the houses doing something, and I think something bit me. So I look at it, and there's like little pimples all over the place. And I said, does it itch? He said, yeah, it itches real bad. I said, yeah, because it's poison something. Are you allergic to poison ivy? Well, he's Hispanic. He has no idea what poison ivy is, and I have no idea how to say it. So I clean it up, and I, put a bandage on it so he doesn't get it all over himself, and he goes back to work. So I go out to the house he was working on, and sure enough, underneath the house is just like poison sumac from one end to the other. And he'd been swimming around in this stuff. So, all right, there we go. So, has nothing to do with nasal drip, but all right. So, to who then are these verses directed to? Is the Torah a dispensation that is only prescribed to the children of Israel and to no one else? That is what a lot of religions teach. And that's why we no longer have to pay attention to the Old Testament. But if we don't pay attention to the Old Testament, you will never understand the New. I don't usually use the word Old Testament and New Testament. Those are Marcion words. But if you don't understand the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, you cannot understand how the covenant is restored. You cannot understand Brit Hadashah. It's not a New Testament. It's a restored covenant. Okay? So the answer to this is found in the last two verses of the study. Neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath. So what did he just say? Neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath, but with him that stands here with us this day before Yahuwah our Elohim. Here we go. And also with him that is not here with us this day. Was I born back then? I did not live back then. I live today. I was not with them this day. But this covenant applies to me because it says, but also with him that is not here this day. Okay? So clearly, these verses are directed to everyone, not only Jews or Christians. Elohim is no respecter of persons, which carries forward to say that he's no respecter of our religions. Okay? These verses are for those who stand before Yahuwah Elohim today, those who stood with him yesterday, and those who will stand with him in the future, even those who have not yet been born. Okay? By proxy, we can and must also take into account that in the times of Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur are also for those who are seeking Yahuwah Elohim and wish to also stand before him day by day. I told myself I need to go through this and make sure that I have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So obviously I didn't. But also for those who wish to stand with him day by day. So this is a parsha that must be taken to heart, and it's a parsha that is read every year prior to Yom Teruah. You know, I don't need to read this prior to Rosh Hashanah. But if I understand that I'm to dedicate myself to a careful and close examination of myself, then it makes perfect sense to read this and understand. If I read the Peshat version alone, then I say, oh, I'm a Jewish guy, and Rosh Hashanah is coming up. I'm going to celebrate the Jewish New Year. But it doesn't do anything to my spiritual connection with my Elohim. That's the whole purpose for everything contained within this book. Okay? So, let's take a few minutes to read Devarim chapter 30. From here, we can have a basis on which to choose when we stop to consider ourselves on Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur. And, me. Okay, there we go. And chapter 30 says, and it shall come to pass, when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has driven you. Okay? And you will call them, and you will bring them up amongst the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim is sending you. So why is Yahuwah Elohim sending them amongst the nations? Because they are to be a nation of ministers and teachers set apart to the specific purpose of taking the word of Elohim, the knowledge of Elohim, to the nations. Yahushua says to his disciples, I'm giving you one more thing. Go out to the nations and teach them and make Talmudim. And then we screw it up because we read it in Greek. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. No. We read it in Hebrew Aramaic. It says, and immerse them in the knowledge of the Father, the knowledge of his redemption and his restoration, and introduce them to the Spirit of the Father. Go back and do what you were supposed to do in Exodus 19, because that's what Yahushua died for, is to bring both houses back together so that you can go out and be the prince and minister to the people of the land. So right here we start right off the bat. Deuteronomy is telling us this is what this is all about. And it shall come to pass, when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among all the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has driven you. And you shall turn to Yahuwah your Elohim, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command you this day, you and your children, with all of your heart and with all of your being. And then Yahuwah your Elohim will turn your captivity and have compassion upon you, and will return you and gather you from all the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. Now there we go. A second prophetic notion, that he will bring you back together. Yahushua had 2 fishes and 5 loaves. Okay? 5,000 people. They took them out. They fed them. They brought back 12 baskets. You have 2 houses, the house of Israel, the house of Judah. You have 5 loaves, which is the Torah. The Torah goes out amongst the nations. The disciples went out and collected the scraps and brought back 12 baskets. That it's the disciples' job to go to the nations and bring them back to restore the prince. He just said, this will happen. Okay? And again, Yahushua makes the way. If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts of the heavens, there will Yahuwah your Elohim gather you, and from there he will fetch you. And Yahuwah your Elohim will bring you into the land of your fathers, that your fathers possess, and you shall possess it. And he will do good and multiply you above your fathers. And Yahuwah your Elohim will perform the circumcision upon your heart. The book of Galatians is all about this. The heart has to be circumcised before you can choose to make the physical, actual jump in to the covenant thing. To love Yahuwah among your heart, and the heart of your offspring, to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, that you may live. It's the first commandment that Yahusha says. Love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Okay? That you may live. And Yahuwah your Elohim will put all these curses upon your enemies and on them that hate you, who persecute you. And you shall make teshuvah, and you will turn around and obey the voice of Yahuwah and do all of his commandments, which I command you this day. And Yahuwah your Elohim will make you have excess in every work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of your land, for good. For Yahuwah will again watch over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. If you will listen to the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim and treasure his commandments and his wisdom, which are written in this scroll of the Torah, and if you turn to Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this is the commandment which I have commanded you this day. It is not hidden from you, neither is it afar off. Okay? It's not hidden from you. It's not far off. First of all, this is the commandment that I give you today. It's not hidden from you. It's not far off. We're going back to chapter 19. This is what Elohim has said. And they said, everything that Yahuwah our Elohim said, that we will do. Because watch what happens next. Pay attention. Okay? It is not in the heavens that you should say, what? Who shall go up for us to the heavens and bring it down that we may hear and do it? Okay? Your responsibility. It's not for somebody else to go find it for you. Okay? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear and do it. It's not somebody's responsibility to delve into the unknown and teach you, because what happens when people tend to delve into the unknown and teach you? They bring back serpents that should have stayed under the water. Okay? But the word is very near to you, in your mouth, and in your heart, and in your hand, that you may do it. It's not somebody else's job. It is in your mouth. It is present with you. It is in your heart, and it is within your strength to do it for yourself. Okay? See, I have set before you this day life and good and death and evil. And that I command you this day to love Yahuwah your Elohim, to have your walk in his walk, and to treasure his commandments and his wisdom and his judgments, that you may live and multiply. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you are going to possess. But if your heart turns away so that you will not hear, but shall be drawn away to worship other Elohim and serve them, how does that happen? You let somebody go to the heavens and bring stuff down for you, or you let somebody go over the sea and bring stuff to you. You don't examine it for yourself. Why do we have Yom Teruah? Why is it there every single year? Because every 6 months, every year. Every year. We have 6 months worth of festivals and 6 months worth of nothing. Every year we come back and we look at where we are, where we've been, and what we need to leave behind in order to move forward. Okay? So, but if your heart turns away, you will not hear, but will be drawn away to worship other Elohim and serve them. I declare to you this day that you shall surely perish, and that you shall not prolong your days upon the land which you pass over the garden to go possess. What's he saying here? That if you don't, you will not cross over the things that will drag you down. That is what Yardeen, that is what Jordan means, to be dragged down. Okay? I call the Shemaim, I call the heavens and the earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that both you and your offspring may live, that you may love Yahuwah your Elohim, and that you may obey his voice, and that you may cleave to him, for he is your life and the length of your days, that you may dwell in the land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them. Okay? Why is Yom Teruah so critically important? It goes beyond eating apples with honey. I can do that any day. It goes beyond eating stuffed pastries and roasted meats. I can do that any day. It goes beyond blowing the shofar. I can do that anyway. I choose not to do that anyway because I can play the shofar on my phone and I don't have to wear out my kazoo. You know, you can stick a kazoo in the end of the... Anyway. Yom Teruah is a critically important day because it prepares us to be able to shed what we don't need at Yom Kippur, and it prepares us to move to Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, the 7 days of Sukkot, and the 8th day. Okay. And so let's take a few minutes there. We already did that. So having read the chapter, the only question left to answer, and hopefully it's one that we will answer over the next week before Yom Teruah, and surely before Yom Kippur, is, where are you? Where are you? And with that, we say, any questions?
I do. What, I got all confused with this. Is Sukkot Yom Teruah the same thing or what?
No.
No. Where are we then?
Okay.
What month are we in now? I know we're in September.
we're-
What's that?
Where
What's
next
that year?
next week we come into Yom Teruah. Okay? Next week. Yom Teruah, not Rosh Hashanah.
No.
You know, Rosh Hashanah is what you're going to hear it called. Everybody's going to call it Yom Kippur,
okay.
Rosh Hashanah. Everyone's going to call it the Jewish New Year. It's Yom Teruah. It's very important that we understand. It's the day that we need to look at ourselves, examine,
Next week.
because a week later after Yom Teruah comes Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
Oh.
Okay?
That's the big
That is the day that we have to decide whether we are going to seek forgiveness for the golden calf or whether we're going to sit there and let the Levites come by and kill us. Remember? 3,000 people died because they would not cross over to Moses. Okay? The
Yes.
beginning of the Levitical system.
Yes.
Okay? After that, a couple of weeks later, a week later, I can't remember, comes Sukkot.
Here it
And Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles.
is. Yes.
Sukkot is a representation for us of, first of all, the millennium. It is a representation of the first day in the garden, the first 7 days, the first day in the garden. Adam didn't survive the first day in the garden. 7 days is a representation of the 1,000 years. How do we know that? Because we're told that they didn't last more than 7 days in the garden. They were only in the garden 7 days in the book of Jubilees. It also tells us that a day is 1,000 years in the book of Jubilees. Adam died at 930 years, 70 years shy of a full day. Okay? Why? Why 70 years shy of a full day? Perception. 70 is a numerical value of the ayin. His perception is what killed him. What was his perception? That if I eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it will make me wise. And it made him wise enough to not admit that he'd done it and make teshuvah for it, which would have immediately caused that minor transgression of eating the fruit to have been forgiven, and we would all be listening to somebody else bump their gums in the garden. But anyway, Sukkot comes after that. And then it finishes with Shemini Atzeret, which is the 8th day. Yes? I don't know.
Okay, good.
Good.
That makes two of us.
Can we clear that up?
So we've been studying Joshua, and all throughout Exodus, and from there forward, we talk about the land that you're going to go in and possess, and going in and take possession of land. So we've had a lot of discussion on this possession. My question is there a deeper meaning other than occupy, own, hang out at this land? What does it mean to truly possess the land?
Well, we can go from 2 points of view. Okay, we can consider the creation event in Bereshit chapter 1 that we can tie into our own lives. Now, I must possess the life that my Elohim has given me is one point of view. But something else that we have to take into consideration is when Yahuwah Elohim tells them to cross over the Jordan, he doesn't tell them to cross over into the land which I'm giving you. He tells them to cross over into the place that I've given you. Okay? In other words, to cross over into the makom. In other words, what he's saying is, once you have crossed over those things that pull you down, you enter into me. So one of the names for Elohim is makom, one of the titles. He is the place. And when we enter into the land of promise, the land of promise is that we recognize that it is within him that we live and move and have our existence. That's the promised land for us. Now, if we consider the physical Eden, why is Israel, and this is going out there, and this is theory, and this is my perception, or my opinion, why is Israel so terribly, terribly valuable to Elohim? Why is everyone, their mother, dog, and second cousin, causing such a ruckus about a piece of land much bigger than Rhode Island, contrary to what they say, because the biblical Israel was quite a large piece. It went all the way down to Egypt, all of Jordan, went all the way up into Lebanon, Syria. So it was a pretty big piece. But why all the ruckus about this little piece of property? Why is it so important to Yahuwah Elohim? My opinion, okay? Not written anywhere. My opinion is that Gan Eden, is actually hidden there. We can't see it because there is a cherub with a flaming sword rotating round and round that causes us not to see it. Anybody in here seen Black Panther? Okay. Or Wonder Woman? No? You're not missing much. Anyway, that whole, I can't remember what it's called, but his kingdom is covered. Nobody knows where it's at. That's what I perceive Eden to be. You can't see it, but it's in Israel. And when the time comes, you know me, I'm not a big rapture guy. I don't. But the elect, the remnant, will be somehow transported, transferred, whatever you want to call it, into the city, which is they will be moved into Eden. Then they will be inside the city, and then they will be outside the city. Okay? But that's just opinion, speculation. I don't know where that came from. But your question, the two modes of thought. The land that he's given us to possess, the promised land, is our life. But also the land that he's given us to possess is our relationship with him, realizing that it is within him that we live and move and have our existence. He never tells Moses to go into the land. He tells him to go to the place. Why? Because he uses the word makom.
Would you spell that, please?
Makom?
Makom, Mem, Kof, Mem. M-O-K-O-M, I think, would be good. Yes?
Kind of, I guess, summed up in the scripture, guard your heart, for out of it are the issues of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the kingdom we have to conquer, each one of us, is our own life.
And that's what Yom Teruah, that's the focus at this time.
It's like getting the leaven out. It's like right before, it's during the
Passover.
feast. You're getting the leaven out.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because they're tied together,
Yeah.
So this was excellent.
Well, good. It was a good fortune cookie. I went to the Chinese restaurant. All right. Anybody else? Well, grooviness has been achieved.
Yeah.
And I don't even play golf.